I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I'm on parole. My life's getting better. I mean, I had just seen my kids for the first time right after that happened. And I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through this on my own. And I was shown right then that I didn't have to.
Hello everyone, my name is Joe Pusateri and I am living the sober life. And today I have a very special guest with me. This is Roger. Roger, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, my name is Roger Fox and I'm a recovering addict, an alcoholic.
And I've known Roger for about the entire time I've lived in this area, so I think I met you pretty early on. And you have one of the things in your story that I think only alcoholics and addicts would understand, which is that you married your ex-wife.
Yeah, right.
So, like that would sound weird to normal people. I'm like, no, that sounds like an addict or an alcoholic.
That was one of the funny things. I remember that's how we connected, kind of, is that I was sharing about that, I think, in a meeting. And I don't know, after the meeting you came to me and you were like, that's hilarious. It's something that we only go through. Mm-hmm. It's funny to... It's kind of funny to explain that to people. I'm like, go be around with my in-laws. I'll introduce my in-laws to someone like, well, these are my ex-in-laws, my new in-laws. It's kind of funny to explain that relationship. But it's a blessing, the way that everything worked. Mm-hmm. It's things because of this program, things that happened that I never thought would have even the opportunity to happen. Came to fruition, I guess you could say. When me and my sponsor did my first, we went through the steps the first time, and I get to 8 and 9, and he's like, all right, I want you to write down people that you can make amends to now, people that you can make an amends to later, and people that you may never get to make an amends to. And I had her family on that never, because the last time I seen them, they ran me out of the house. I mean, I've been terrible to their daughter. I've been terrible to their grandkids. I mean, they tried to give me opportunities, and I took advantage of them. And then, through this process, through this relationship, I mean, God puts me on their back porch less than a year later after I made that list. And here I am. I'm on their back porch helping their daughter, my ex-wife, get into treatment. Help her get into treatment. She's been sober ever since. It's just like that relationship. Never thought it would happen today. I just have a key to their house. I go in, eat. It's just it's a beautiful thing. They're some of the most important people in my life. So I got that back because of this program.
So when is your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is April the 7th, 2014. So just celebrated 5 years, and it's my first year, my first 13 months I spent in prison. So, that's really where April the 7th, I didn't know I was going to get sober. Mm-hmm. It was just the last time that I got arrested. I know that I was on the run from probation. I'd broken into a house that my mom owned. She shows up there, and I'm at my end, man. I'm really at the rock bottom, that jumping off point, where I needed to do something. I needed to find a solution, or I was just ready to die. And she called probation and parole. They came and arrested me, and I went to jail. April the 7th, 2014. I always joke, the worst thing that happened to me that day is that Kentucky got beat by UConn in the national championship. Not that I was on my way to prison. Not that, it was all over with. My life was a wreck. I hadn't seen my kids in I don't know how long. Family was sick of me, but, Kentucky lost.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I remember that game.
Yeah, and I watched it from the Lincoln County Jail. And, I didn't know what my life held, right? I didn't know what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. I knew for sure that I was going to prison. The judge had made it clear just 5 months before that when I see you again, I'm going to put you in prison. Don't ask for treatment. Don't, none of that. You're going. And that's exactly what happened, But in the process, and I was so broke, man, when they arrested me and they booked me into the jail, and obviously I'm going through that. And I'm just so lost, man. I don't know how to make this work. I've been in treatment tons of times, They send me out of state, send me up to Indianapolis, try to help me get sober, put me on medicine, kick me out of the house, cut me off completely, try to love me back to life, all that stuff, and none of it worked. And I'm in Lincoln County Jail. I don't have a concept of God at this point, and there's this preacher that comes in on Wednesdays, and he's doing this service, and I go, and I don't go to hear about God or nothing like that. I go to see my friends, you know, and this preacher gets to know me, man. He actually takes time to get to know a little bit of my story, and he says, Roger, why don't you give God a shot? And my life's changed since that moment, man. I mean, my life is basically written in two different chapters, before that and after that.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Man, so this is really cool. Like, it just kind of occurred to me the other day. We were talking before the podcast episode here about, you know, why I'm doing this. What was the reason for getting this started? And it almost kind of just occurred to me yesterday or the day before, kind of like what the real reason is, you know, because at first it was just, it's fun. I like sobriety. I want to do something. I want to give back. You know, it's kind of cool to mess around with all the equipment and the software and just put something out there and see what happens. And if somebody watches it, great. If nobody watches it, but at the very least, if one person gets something out of it, it's worth all the effort.
Right.
But then it occurred to me, it's like, people who are trying to get sober and people who are trying to stay sober deserve good recovery.
Yeah.
And you can't just take for granted that everyone knows what that is, because you know, not everyone is in every meeting, and not every meeting is the same, and not everyone's program is the same. And if recovery is a huge tent, like, you can be pretty close to the edge of the tent, or you can be right smack dab in the middle. And in certain situations, people might not have ever spent time in the middle because they don't know anyone in the middle.
Yeah.
Because the recovery they've experienced is not that really, really good recovery.
Yeah.
So this is cool to have you, because like, when I'm around you, man, like, you're just not just a ball of energy, but like, you're a ball of positivity, which is awesome. You know, like, this is what you should be living. You know, like, to anybody, I was like, you want to know what it's like to be sober? Go check out my friend Roger. Like, this is a guy who just clearly loves life. You know, he's not living in fantasy land. He lives in the same world we do.
Yeah.
But he loves life. You can just tell. So you said that you're different before and after. It's like 2 chapters. So tell me about chapter 1. Like, what were you used to be like? 'Cause I'm sure you were nothing like this.
No. And, you know, it was just completely broken. I always try to tell people that I just felt empty from before I ever drank or did drugs. You know, I just felt empty. I remember like going to school, feeling like I didn't fit in. I would try to compare myself to those kids in school, like, because they had nice shoes and I had whatever, you know, or because they had their families together and my dad bounced in and out of my life. You know, I don't ever really remember spending like a Christmas with my father until I was probably 15 or 16 years old, because he was doing this. He was drinking and he was running around in the streets. He was bouncing in and out of penitentiaries, and that made me feel different, especially in a small town when you're growing up and your friends, like what you would imagine, or like what you would see on TV, the family that you would see on TV. And it's like your friends have that, you know, mom and dad are together and they live a good life. And then you go home and you see your dad get drunk and beat your mom up, you know, and that's tough. So I carried that emptiness with me for the longest time until I found alcohol. And I mean, I'm one of those guys that in the meeting when people are talking about, I knew I'd arrived. Like, that was me. I remember the first time that I drank, and I remember what it felt like the first time that I got drunk, and I was like, this is it. Like, all of a sudden, I feel whole. Like, this fixed me. This fixed me, you know? And it worked for a bit, but then it didn't. Like, I mean, I just needed more, you know, and obviously I can't function without it and stuff like that. So it really just turned me into my dad. And I never wanted to be like that, but that's exactly who I turned into. You know, a guy in his 20s who has 2 kids and a wife and a real bad relationship, and who can't function, who can't work. Because when I drink, I'm the world's worst. You know, I'm unemployable. I'm going to steal. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the next one. And I don't really care who I hurt, you know. And I'll live in some really bad situations. I always tell my clients when I'm talking to them, I'm like, you know, I lived in an abandoned duplex with no electricity or no water, shot dope by candlelight, and thought that was okay. They always crack up because I tell this story about I would get hungry every once in a while, and so I had a crock pot, and I would take a bottle of water and I would pour it in there and take some ramen noodles and I would put it in there, and then I would take it to the business next door and plug it into their plug outside. I would go out and steal a bunch of stuff so I could get high, come home, have my drugs, and my dinner.
I was cooking while you were...
Yeah, it took about 8 hours to cook some noodles in the crock pot. But that's the way I lived, man, and I thought it was okay. I thought that was fine, and I was okay with it. I knew what was coming. I never really had major consequences until they all kind of started coming all at one time. Me and Alyssa get divorced, and then I started going to jail. I did like 7 days in jail, and then I did 30 days, and then I did 60 days, and then I get a 10-year prison sentence right behind that. So like that's the consequences in my life. I used treatment as a way to get people off my back because I'd done something dumb. I'd stole Granny's credit card, so I would. I'm a drug addict. I need to go to treatment. And they were like, all right. I would go to treatment. And I get kicked out of treatment for getting high. I can't stay sober in treatment,
So tell me about like the age. So what age did you start drinking and using?
14.
14.
Yeah,
okay.
I remember very specifically. We lived in Mercer County. It was a dry county, and we had to go to Anderson County to buy alcohol. And I was with my mom and her boyfriend and my best friend. Now, my mom's boyfriend, I'm not sure if he was an alcoholic or not. I just know he drinks a lot. And we're going through this drive-through liquor store, and he's like, what would these boys back here want? And I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted. Just give me something. And I still don't really know. I know it was Southern Comfort, and I know it was a bottle about this big. And I know I drank it from Lawrenceburg back to Bergen. And when I got out of the truck, I thought, this is good. This is it. 14, and I started chasing it, and I chased it for the next 14 years. And it was terrible. I chased that feeling, that exact feeling, that first drunk for the rest of the entire time that I was drinking.
It's almost like we get this magical feeling the first time. And maybe it isn't the first time, somebody actually drinks alcohol, but we all have a first time that we just get that feeling.
Yeah.
And we chase it with every subsequent
because it fixed me.
Yeah. And you never quite get back to where it was, or it goes in a different direction.
So for me, when it quit working as good, I thought, man, I need something else to fix me. And my mom, she never drank or used or anything like that, but she had always had a relationship, and I noticed that in my life, and I thought, well, maybe a woman can fix me, So I met a woman, and she had a kid that was like 15 months old, and she had a house. Well, I didn't. I was living in the Grady's, and I thought if I could get her to marry me. Like, if I could be, just become responsible, like that would make me responsible. Having a kid would make me responsible. So I talked her into marrying me somehow, man, which is crazy. And it didn't fix me at all.
How old were you then?
We were like 22 or 23. I just found this picture the other day. We were laughing about how young we looked, It was 2007, so yeah, I was 23. And I really wanted her to fix me. And I really wanted to be responsible. I wanted to be a good dad. And I wanted to be a good husband. And I just didn't have it in me, man. That was my first experience with treatment. Before we got married, I came to her family and I said, look, I have this problem. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with using. And I think that I need to go to treatment. And I'll get some separation. I would sit around and I just didn't buy in. I'm telling you, the God thing really... It kept me standoffish a little bit for the longest. And then...
So tell me about that.
I don't know. I don't know where my resentment from God really came from. I don't know if it was because my dad beat my mom and I thought, why am I in this situation? Or I would have this one specific family, like my best friend growing up, man. His mom and him, they would take me to church with them every Sunday. And when I went there, I just felt different than everybody in that church. And I didn't want to be different. I just wanted to be normal. So I really don't know where that resentment or that whatever it is that outlook on God came from. But whenever I went to treatment and I heard it for the first time and that God's a part of this, I thought, that isn't for me. Yeah. I guess probably I think that I'm smarter You know, I think I'm smarter than that. Mm-hmm. You know, and I know that I thought it then for sure. Like I can outthink this. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, and that didn't work. And I got out of treatment. Man, I was delusional. I mean, they picked me up from treatment, come home, they're having like this big celebration, and I think it's for me, but really it's just like, it's like the 4th of July, you know, like everybody's there, and I'm like, oh, I've arrived, you know, I'm home. No, it wasn't for me. I relapsed immediately, man. I mean, within hours of coming home from treatment.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, my wife, she had struggled in the past, and she was trying to, you know, stay sober and be a mom and all these things. And she put up with me for as long as she could. And she was just like, she joined me, you know. So for 3 years we were married, 2.5 years we were married, using together. And it just deteriorated. It just got worse and worse and worse every day. And we ended up having a daughter in 2009. And, you know, I'm like, I don't care about anybody but myself to the point that I would allow her to use while she's pregnant. You know, like that doesn't bother me. And that's the type of person that I am. And then we ended up getting a divorce in 2010. I told a lie. Her family found out about it. Basically, it was like, here's decision time for you. It's going to be us or him. And she chose them. And I was glad. I thought that I wanted that responsibility. I thought that responsibility was going to fix me, but it didn't. And it actually became a burden. So go, and so I can go do my own thing, you know. And then I just hit the bricks running even harder, man, you know. And it all just came crashing down.
So did you go back to treatment multiple times after that?
Yeah, multiple times. I would go to treatment, like I said, to get people off my back, mainly when I would steal from like my grandmother, who was the only place that I had to go. You know, like that's where I would go to be safe, and they would always take me in. But I would steal the credit card, and then when the credit card bill came, I'd be like, I'm a drug addict, I need to go to treatment, and I would run off to treatment. And then I would get there, and they started talking about God. And I'm like, this isn't for me. They started talking about sponsors. This isn't for me. They started talking about going to meetings and that 4th step and all that. This isn't for me. You know, all the excuses that everybody makes. Like that's the stuff that, and I don't need it. I don't need it. And I just really wasn't ready. I really wasn't ready. I know that for sure. So, you know, we do that.
Go ahead.
We do that. And, man, things started happening in my life. It's just so crazy looking back at it today. I know it's like God working in my life. People putting me in certain situations. Like I had to go through the stuff that I had to go through. Like I said, and I'm in a house where they're cooking meth. Police come, knock on the door, boom, they find a meth lab in there, and I'm looking at major time. You know, I'd met a girl. Again, man, it's always drugs, alcohol, or women. You know, and I'm like, just fix me. One of y'all fix me, please. And I'd met a girl, and she was with me, and she's in there. And her name's Cassie, man, and she's important. She's an important part of my story because we went to prison together. On April the 7th, when I got arrested for the last time, she was with me when my mom showed up at the house, and she left. And it was only like a few days later, she gets arrested. She's back in jail. And we maintain contact the entire time that we're in prison. And we even maintained contact after I was released, and I was at the Shepherd's house, and she was at a program in Louisville where I'm at the Shepherd's house, and she's in Louisville. She had just finished a SAT program there, and she's living in a halfway house, and I'm involved in 12 Steps a little bit. You know, I have a sponsor, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm kind of doing the steps. I did 1, 2, and 3 for sure. You know, like no problem. And she's not really doing any of that, man. And about 6 months out, we'd both been out for about 6 months. I'll never forget it. It's in November. I'm trying to call her. I wake up one day, I try to call her, no answer, which was weird. And I tried to call her all day, man. I probably called her 100 times. And that evening I had group at the Shepherd's house, and I get out of group, and she still hadn't called me. I'm worried. So I call Louisville Metro and tell them, like, can you go over there and do a welfare check? And they go there and they find her dead. Oh, you know, heroin overdose. She'd been clean like 15 months. You know? And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I'm on parole. You know, my life's getting better. I mean, I had just seen my kids for the first time right after that happened. And I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through this on my own. And I was shown right then that I didn't have to. like men from this program picked me up and carried me through that. They went to the funeral with me. They didn't even know her, you know.
Yeah.
They went to that funeral with me, and they checked on me every single day. They took me to dinner, whatever, you know. They were just there. Like if I had to cry, they were there, you know. And that really changed my whole perspective on this whole deal. You know, I really wanted it. When I was in prison, and I was telling somebody this the other day, that when we're locked up, it's easy to say what we want. And it's like, I'm going to stay sober this time, and I'm going to do, you know, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to get a sponsor, I'm going to work a program, and I'm going to do all this. But it's like as soon as freedom hits us, I forgot how bad it is in there. The book talks about that, you know.
Right.
I forget the pain and the misery, and I forget it instantly. And that was kind of happening until she died, you know. And then it's like, all right, man, if you don't do this, like, that's you, you know, and that's your kids running around that funeral home. And I just didn't want that to happen, man. And I knew, you know, I know I'm living in grace at that point, you know, really. So I dug in, man. I did that 4th step with my sponsor. He always, the entire time, like, I just kind of bucked on that 4th step. And he's like, well, you know, you're either going to do it or you're going to drink, basically is what it comes down to. And I didn't want to do that, man. So I dug in and I did the work, and my whole life changed right after that. You know, the way that I viewed the world, it's not all about Roger. It's about how can I help? What can I give back? And that was kind of my last 6 months as a client at the Shepherd's House. Tried to put in as much as I possibly could. I helped new guys. I did whatever, you know, and I graduated that program, and I ended up going to work for them, but just becoming a part of that recovery community. That was like the biggest thing. That was like the thing that saved me, is like being a part of that group, not being around the edges of it, but being in the middle of it, being active. And, you know, so that was a big help, man. It saved my life. I know that.
So do you sponsor guys?
I do, yeah. And, you know,
What kind of sponsor are you?
I don't know, I'm probably a terrible one, honestly. You know, I'm a sponsor that, well, just like my sponsor, I try to be like my sponsor, really, because that's somebody that I look up to, and we keep it, you know, I'm friendly. We talk, you know, we talk about whatever, but when it comes down to it, the answer is typically, are you going to pray about it? Are you going to do the work? You know, I don't really listen to a whole lot of crying and complaining, because we have the solution right in front of us. Like, oh, you don't know what to do? Well, here, do this.
Right,
you know, here's the work. Where's your part in it? Pray about it. Meditate on it. And that's what my sponsor, I'll call him with the, you know, I think the world's collapsing, and I need a solution. I need you to give me a solution right now. And my sponsor always like, pray about it. It's between you and God. And I'm like, man, I hate you. I'm like, I hate you. I'm like, I know that's what you were going to say. But, and that's what I try to be, man. You know, it's tough. I sponsored a lot of guys when I was living in Lexington, and then I come back here, and obviously this is a smaller recovery community, and, you know, working in treatment here made it a little bit more difficult, but I still try to sponsor some guys in Lexington when I can get up there and do that. But
How many meetings do you do a week?
Man, I like to do 3. It's tough. Life, and I make excuses, but, you know, life, school, kids, work, all these things get in the way, and I'll let it. And then I'm the last option guy. I'm like the last option guy, man. I always got to, you know, be miserable, and then I'll be like, what's wrong with me? Oh, I haven't been to a meeting in a week. I better go.
Right.
You know, and I really struggle with that, moving from a community that has 100 and some meetings, you know, a week in Lexington. I could always basically hit one, whether it was at 7 a.m. or at midnight. You know, there was a meeting option to move in here, where it's a struggle. You know, it's a little bit more of a struggle for me. So I've really, in the past year, I've really struggled to try to find ways to include more meetings. Like when I was living in Lexington, man, I'd hit like 5. You know, and But I also didn't have my kids with me. You know, I also didn't have my wife, and I wasn't in school, and I think I might have worked at Arby's or something like that at the time. So I try to get 3, though, at least.
When I got sober in Louisville, I don't know what the total number is, but I think it's just shy of 500 meetings a week. I've heard people say that a couple times. So somewhere in that neighborhood. And I tell you, for the first couple of years, I mean, I was aiming for 7 a week. And a lot of times I could get 7 a week, and every now and then I'd hit 2 in a day, you know, and make it 9 in a week or something like that. and I loved it, and I was just fortunate that I had the opportunity. I mean, I had a full-time job, but it was flexible enough, and I could always just find a close place to jump for lunch or immediately after work or do an 8 o'clock meeting or something like that. And I don't have the luxury anymore. My life is fuller. My kids are older, more active, so I have more responsibilities because of sobriety. But I'm like you. 3 for me is kind of like the minimum. I mean, not that I always get 3, but I want to have 3 at least. 4 is even better. But if I can get 3, I feel like myself. Anything less than that, I don't even feel like myself. I just feel irritable, and people get on my nerves a little bit more. But I go to Lexington actually quite a bit.
Yeah, I have to push myself. Like on Saturday mornings, there's a men's meeting that I like, and I really like those men's meetings with old timers, and that's my crowd. Up in Lexington, I had the opportunity to check out, and you kind of find where you like to be, and there's like young people's meetings, and that really wasn't for me. I needed to be around, I need to be around some old timers, man, that are going to call me on my crap and tell me exactly how it is.
Yeah, the young people's meetings, I mean, they're great for young people, and I think for people that like need to know that they can have fun. Yeah, I'm glad they exist, but for me, it was like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of young people trying to hook up.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't quite my scene, but more power to the
for sure.
Into those.
Yeah,
I like to find more quality recovery. People have been around a lot longer and give me some direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I have a question that I asked Hillary this last week, but Isaiah House is a faith-based recovery treatment center, and I'm in the ministry myself, so I'm all about it. However, like when I got sober, I had a big resentment against religion and the church. And so had I come into recovery and gotten a lot of religious stuff, I would have walked out of the door. Yeah. So I'm really grateful that, traditional 12-step recovery is spiritual but not religious. And we, do not impose religion on people. And to this day, like I'm really, really careful not to impose a religious outlook, and it's your own journey, and if your journey comes my direction, we can talk at that time. But so when I saw Isaiah House for the first time, I was like, faith-based recovery, and I kind of sniffed around and checked them out, and I really, really like them. I think that they do a good job. But I'm just curious about, number one, your feeling about the intersection of faith-based and recovery, and then your experience. I know you're just starting with the Isaiah House, but
so like I said, I think obviously, I mean, the times that I went to treatment and they started talking about God, that scared me, and I think that there's a lot of people out there like me that, whatever, they have this resentment towards God or the church. And I think when I was talking about my resentment was more towards the church, not necessarily God, but it can be scary. Even in my life today, this is a process, and this is something that's going to be extremely new to me. Working in a Christ-based treatment center, it's going to be different. But I think that the thing, and we were talking about it earlier, is that it's coming from love. And that's really what it's about. Is if you can reach people with love, it makes a difference, man. And you'll see a difference in people's lives, and that's what I've seen from them. And that's what attracted me to them the most, because I'd had job offers, my time at the Shepherd's House and the time that I've been here working. And to have that happen, to have that opportunity now, and I talk to a lot of people about it. I mean, I got a lot of it. I've talked to everybody that I know. Hey, what do you think about this? And I just felt it inside of me. Like, I know that this is the path that God's leading me on. But as far as early on, it would have been a struggle for me, to come into a place and have those, resentments or whatever towards God and the church. It would have been a struggle for me to get sober there, but it works. I see it's working in a lot of men and women's lives now, and they're proof of it. The stuff that they do over there is amazing.
Yeah, I think the more recovery that's out there, the better.
Yeah.
So. I'm not one of these people that thinks that the way that it happened for me is the only way. It's just the only way I know.
Yeah.
So it's the only way I can really speak about
authentically. But if there's other ways for people to get sober that have worked, then more power to you.
I think that might have been one of the first questions that I ever asked you. I wanted to know, were you a preacher before you got sober? And that blew me away. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, this is the path that you're on, though.
Yeah.
And inside of you, like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm at too.
It was wild because I was just at the seminary that I went to yesterday and today for their graduation, and so I had an opportunity to stand in front of the people that are graduating and just really, really briefly mention kind of how I got there. And I don't tell them my whole drunk-a-log or anything like that, but I do talk about how I got this voice from God. I was on a 7-mile run at Seneca Park in Louisville. And I was about 4 miles in, and I was kind of coming around this bend, and I just had this really strong sensation of God's voice saying, I want you to go to seminary. And I was like, but I'm not even a Christian. I don't even know how that's possible, that could be right.
Yeah.
But, so I go on that path, and my attitude was like, the doors, like, this can't work for a lot of reasons. Number one, I'm married, and I got kids, and I worked in construction and development for my dad, and I wanted to take over the company when he retired in his position. And I was happy with the trajectory of my life and did not have much of a faith in God. Certainly not in the church. Well, no, I take that back. I did have a faith in God because I got sober.
Yeah.
But before then I didn't. And I didn't have any kind of love for the church. And I got a mortgage, and I just can't pick up and go to seminary. So this is ridiculous. So I was like, I'll make every effort until the door slams in my face, and then I'm off the hook.
Yeah.
And the story, the door never slammed in my face. It's almost like the doors just kept opening and opening, and I'm like, man, I wish a door would shut.
Yeah.
But the point of me bringing all this up is that I would not have been able to recognize God's voice had it not been for getting sober and having recovery. Because when I got sober, that was my first real introduction to God with no religion whatsoever. And so then when the call to ministry came, the only reason I followed it, because like I said, it was absurd, but the only reason I followed it is because I knew it was God's voice, because I had gotten sober and I'd been saved from that wretched life I was living. So I was like, I know it's you. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
So.
No, I understand it. I always tell clients, I'm like, what do you think the steps are designed to do? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, it's designed to have you have that spiritual experience, to find that relationship with God, for you to be able to do that, and that's kind of what happened in my life. I had zero concept of God until a preacher just says, hey, give God a shot. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm willing to go up here,
I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to go to this cell and pray, God, I don't know what you have in store for me. I don't know where you want me to go, what path you want me to go on, but I'm just willing to follow it. And that's what happens. I go to prison. And I just continue to trust God. Mm-hmm. Whatever. Okay, I'm in prison. This sucks. Okay, but I'm trusting you. And then I get to a SAT program in prison up at LaGrange. And it's so crazy, man.
Were you at Luther Luckett?
No, I was at the Rotary Farm, so it's right next door.
Gotcha.
It's a 200 man SAT program there.
Okay.
And
because I used to do ministry at Luther Luckett.
Oh, okay.
Years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So I was at the Rotary, and I'm just trusting God. That's what I'm saying the entire time. The whole time that I'm locked up, I'm just going to trust God, whatever He's got in store for me. And I get to this SAT program. It's 200 men. Now, everybody in that program, there's only one person that's from this area. This is where I'm from. I was born and raised here. And there was one person from here. He's from Harrisburg. And me and him started that SAT program on the same day, and we finished on the same day. When we go through that program, I'm just trying to trust God. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I'm reading in the book. There's, we have people come in from the outside, but you don't really have that much contact with people in the program and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to read, and I'm trying to pray, and I'm trying to maintain this relationship with God, because that's one part that I do believe in the book the most, is that daily reprieve. And I really believe that, and I would try to just, God, help me stay sober today, and whatever you can, whatever I need to do, let me be of service to somebody, and let me follow your path. And me and Brian went through that program. The guy that I met, we went through that program the entire time together, and he had parole upon completion. So the day we completed the program, he got out. He was going home, And actually, he was going to the shepherd's house. So that's how I heard about the shepherd's house. Is he said, Roger, when you get out, come and find me. He said, I'm going to the shepherd's house. And I said, well, that's good. When I get out, I'm going to Granny's. I'm going back to where I always go. I'm sick of being locked up. I'm tired of programs. I'm not doing it anymore. And I go and see the parole board, and I make parole. And they ask where you're going to go, and I put Granny's address down. And I'm just praying to God, please, whatever you got in store for me. And I even found some journals when we were moving that I'd written, maybe like 3 months before I got out. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to maintain this. I don't even know how I'm going to stay sober. I don't know how I'm going to live in the real world. I don't know how I'm going to do any of this stuff, but I want it. And I'm just going to trust God. So I get closer, man. I get like a month to getting out, and I get some mail, and it's like, hey, your granny, your home placement said, your home placement was approved, but now it's been unapproved. Your grandmother called and said she don't want you to come there. So I'm like scrambling, I got a month till I get out. I don't know anybody. My whole family's cut me off, but I remember Brian, and I met him on day one, and God's put him in my life for this reason. He said the shepherd's house. Let's see what happens. So I call the director. He sends me an application, and they have me a bed waiting the day I get out, May the 1st, 2015. My mom picks me up, man, and she picks me up at the gates, and she drives me straight to Lexington. She does not want to give me the opportunity to mess up because she just knows, she probably didn't believe that that anything different could ever happen because we'd been through this so many times.
Right. Yeah.
So
what evidence have you given her that you can do anything different?
Right. Yeah. So, man, I get there, and my life, without Brian, I would have never ended up at the shepherd's house, and I would have never ended up going through that program and having all those things happen to me while I was there. I would have never ended up going to work for them and being able to come down here and work with so many people that I grew up with.
What's that like, man?
That's like the best. One of the first days I got down here. So I went to work for the shepherd's house, and it was great. And I did that. I ran a house for him in Lexington for like 7 months. And then my boss came to me and he said, what do you think about going home? He said, we're going to open an outpatient program working with inmates down there. And I was like, let's go. This is going to be great. So as soon as I get down here, day one, man, I seen kids I seen grown people that I grew up with, that I went to middle school with, people that I robbed in the madness and people that had robbed me in the madness, that vicious cycle that we live in. And they're like, Roger, what happened to you? Like, all I've been doing the last few years is bouncing in and out of jail. And you're down here running this program, And I'm like, I can tell you, here's the solution. This is what worked for me. Y'all know how bad I was. Y'all know how I was living and all this stuff that I've done. And here's what fixed me, this program. Like getting a sponsor, doing it thoroughly. This is what fixed me, man. And it's been a blessing to be able to work with those people, and to make a difference in people's lives and to see that happen and to have a good team of people around me. Yeah, man, it's overwhelming to think of all the stuff that we've been able to accomplish in 2.5 years.
If somebody was new and they came to you and they're like, my life's a wreck and I want what you have, what do I need to do? What is the program of action for me to have what you got?
Yeah, get a sponsor, go to meetings, get a sponsor that's going to work you, because there's sponsors like, yeah, I got a sponsor, but we haven't done any step work. No, that don't fly. Like the book says, man, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And I believe that. Like, read that book, do that work. And your life will get better. I haven't ever seen it fail a person who actually dug into it and did it.
I was talking about that with somebody a few weeks ago. Well, Aaron,
yeah,
we were talking, and I don't remember what the context of that part of the conversation was, but I hear people say, "Well, I went to AA and it didn't work. Like I kept going back out or whatever," and I want to correct him and say, well. No, I don't know your experience, so I'm kind of going on a limb here. But my guess is you went to meetings.
Yeah.
And just going to meetings is not something I've seen be very effective.
No.
When we say, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed the path, we're talking about working the steps.
Yeah.
You have to work the steps and continue to work the steps. Now, if you do that, I'm like you. I can't think of anyone. Now, I know people who had good sobriety, worked the steps, sponsored 1 million people, and got drunk later because they stopped doing those things.
Yeah.
And then they stopped going to meetings, and then they lost their connection with God, and they, something happens, and they were unprepared for a big dose of stress or anxiety or a tragedy that happens in their life, and they go back out.
Yeah.
But for the people that work the steps and continue to work the steps, I've never seen anyone relapse. I mean, maybe it happens, but I've never seen it, and I've never heard of that ever happening.
I think thoroughly, you got to do it. And there's days that I don't do it perfectly. Like I'll slack,
Sure.
I'll be on my way to work and I'm like, man, I didn't pray. I do that stuff, man. But I know that I have the ability to get back to it. I know what works for me, so I just get right back to it. Like there's periods of time that I've went through, and I've talked to my sponsor. I'm like, man, I'm really struggling. It just seems like things are kind of stale, And he's like, we're gonna go through these periods, but we just resume as soon as possible, And to be able to experience stuff like that and know and have that experience to share with sponsees, or I got some sponsees that are coming up, with some decent amount of time, 2 or 3 years, and to see that happen, and they're calling with me with the same problems. Like, my sponsor, we always laugh because it feels like he's probably about a year and a half or 2 years ahead of me in his life, like the stuff that he's going through. And then here I'll come a couple years later going through the exact same things, and he's there to share it with me. And I'm kind of doing the same thing with my sponsees. They're like, man, my life's getting busy. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens, Yeah. Like I find out that I'm kind of slacking on meetings, and I'm like, yeah, that's happened to me. Here's what I've done, So that's the beauty of the program, and that's the way that it works.
Now, so if someone said, I have good days, I have bad days, describe for me, what are the actions that make up like the best possible day of recovery you can have?
Yeah. So for me, it's about, my sponsor always says it's about prayer and action. So when I get up, when I'm maintaining that relationship with God, first thing, God, and I still try to pretty much pray the same thing that I did when I was in prison. I don't really know what you have set out for me today, but let me follow your path. Let me be of service to somebody, not just people in the rooms, but let me be of service to as many people as I possibly can, and let me do it in a good way. And
that's a good prayer. Do you pray on your knees?
Sometimes, not all the time, man. I'm lazy sometimes, but I like to, because it's oh man, I got ego problems. I'm prideful, and when I get down on my knees, there is something about that submission that just humbles me.
You want to know what's funny? When people because I was not a religious person, so when people would say, like you got to get down on your knees and pray, like I thought that was a figure of speech. Like it never occurred to me until like 10 months into, or 7, 8 months into sobriety, that people actually got down like on their literal knees. Like I thought they were just saying like, I really, really prayed. Like I got down on my knees and prayed. That's just like, I didn't think that they actually got down on their knees. I thought they were just saying that. But it makes a difference. And that, like, early on, from the first time that I ever talked to my sponsor, he gave me just a certain set of instructions that I still try to apply to my life today about the way that I, kind of start my day or the way that I finish my day. And he's like, you get up, you make your bed, you read 86 and 87, and you pray. And at night you you pray and you do your inventory, and that's it. So like 86 and 87 always became very important to me, because that is the instructions right there on how to live, about how to handle certain situations, pausing when agitated, and I'm like, yeah. So I started doing that early on, and I did it while I was in treatment at the Shepherd's House, and I did that for a year straight. So by the time I graduated, man, it was just so ingrained in me that I just kind of carried it on, and I still try to do it today. I've added a lot more reading and stuff when I do it. Like I said, I'm lazy a lot of times, but definitely pray and then help people. That's it for me, What's of all the things that we do in recovery, like what's as good as it gets? What's the best thing that possibly happens in recovery? Those moments that you have where you're like, man, it just doesn't get any better. Like this. It
happened this morning, man, Joe. It happened this morning. Today was my last day at the Shepherd's House. We had a big day going on. We did the bicycle thing, and I had to get my daughter up at like 7:00 and take her over to her grandmother's. And And I drive her over there, and she gets out of the car, and she walks into the house, and I sit there in the driveway, and I promise, man, I was overcome with emotion, and I'm crying, and I'm just like, dude, I'm so grateful. Because, obviously this is my last day at the Shepherd's house, and without that, like, I don't know if I would have had any of this. I don't know. I went 30 months without seeing my kids, and now my daughter lives with us full time, and our son, he's a grandma's boy. He bounces back and forth, and that's fine. Like, that's the life that we live. And but just that gratitude, being grateful for what I do have. And this is as good as it gets. I feel like this is it, man. This is beautiful. I have my daughter, and I get to drop her off, and there's not any drama attached to it, and it's just, man, it's beautiful. I was overwhelmed this morning when that happened, and just thinking, like, man, a few years ago this wouldn't have been possible. And this program and this relationship with God made it possible. Beautiful.
I know it is.
It's beautiful, man. Yeah, you see me just 7:15 this morning crying like a baby, not because of anything, but because I get to spend time with my daughter, and I get to drop her off, and I have a car, that's amazing. A house. And that's really why people are always like, you're always smiling, because I'm grateful, and I try to carry that attitude of gratitude a lot, and because that's the only way that I'm going to live, man. If I stay grateful for the stuff that I have, this life that I have, I feel like I'm in overtime. I feel like this is bonus time right here.
Yeah.
I don't deserve this stuff. But
it's all icing on the cake at this point.
Yeah, for sure, man. And so carrying that with me throughout the day, trying to show people, give people that. I try to give people that. Well, I've got the worst life. Is there anything that you can be grateful for? You're breathing, you're free. Working with inmates, that's the best, because they get out of jail and they forget how bad it is in jail. And I'm like, just remember what it was like a week ago, when you're locked up and you have no freedom. You have no choice when you're going to go home. When you have no choice when you're going to use the bathroom, or when you're going to wake up, or what you're going to eat for dinner. You should be extremely grateful. When you put it to them like that, they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. So
and the good news is you can really be grateful in any situation.
For sure.
I mean,
yeah.
There's no short supply of things that we should be grateful for, that we could be grateful for. It's all up here. It's all just a matter of making that decision.
Yeah.
And then I think when we get in the habit of being grateful, it just becomes automatic, and then we start seeing more things, and they catch us off guard, and we just get overwhelmed with this sense of gratitude. I heard a preacher one time, and this is before I was religious. I was just listening to some people online, and I just got into some sermons from this one particular pastor of an Episcopal church or something. But he talked about glory attacks, and I was like, I want to have one of those. Just a glory attack. I'm like, I don't know if I know what he's talking about, but I feel like the phrase says it all. And then since then, I've had those moments. I call them glory attacks, where I'm overwhelmed with just how good. And I don't have any more money in my pocket. I don't have any fewer problems in my life. I don't have any fewer challenges. Like, everything's the same, like everything if I have one on Tuesday, it's no different than Monday. The difference is, like, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude for being alive, for having a family, for being sober, for having friends, for having a purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent so much of my life having no purpose whatsoever and feeling like a mistake, and feeling just completely like I didn't fit into this world. Like I fell into this universe by accident. And I tried to compensate for my lack of meaning and purpose by trying to make myself feel okay, which was drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to do that because I feel like I have a purpose. And God is so good, the purpose encompasses all the bad stuff. Because, like, you've been in prison, right? And that is enormously helpful. Like you have a better chance of helping some of those guys than I do, because I didn't do any time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in jails plenty of times, to bring a message in, but my help only goes so far, Yet there are things that I've done that I have been really, sorry for and ashamed of. but those make me uniquely qualified to reach guys who have done those exact same things.
And I think that's what makes this program so special. Because there's times that I'll go to my sponsor and I'll say, I had a problem with this, or I'm having a problem with this right now, and he'll be like, well, I don't really have any experience with that, but I know somebody that does, and they can point me in the right direction, So it's like you never feel like any problems are too overwhelming for you. I don't feel that way, because I know that there's somebody out there that's already been through it and that's willing to kind of share their experience with me and help me get through it and give me some suggestions about it. So I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the program.
Now I notice, you're on social media. I'm on social media, Facebook and everything, and you don't, break anonymity of being a part of any anonymous organizations, but you're very open and public about being in recovery and so forth. Like, how has that been for you? Like, was that something that, have you just been from the jump? Like,
from the jump, because I just feel like, I lived in my active addiction very out loud.
So everyone knew.
People knew, like everybody knew. Like, I didn't try to keep it a secret like some people do. Everybody knew. And I just decided that's kind of the way that I was going to live in my recovery, because, like, I don't want anybody to feel like that they don't fit in. So maybe me just posting something on social media is going to trigger somebody, and they're going to message me and say, hey, I've been thinking about going to meetings. Well, don't think about it. Let me just come by and get you, and we'll go to one, or they know maybe it might be 2 a.m., and I haven't had any contact with this person in years, but they're struggling. And then, they message me and say, hey, you just got a minute to talk. So that's why I want everybody to know. I don't care if you're, whatever you're struggling with, you can reach out to me and I'll try to help you as much as I possibly can.
Any time of day, any time at night? You leave your ringer on at night?
Sometimes, but I don't sleep very well, so I'm up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't sleep for long periods of time anyway, so I'll be up. And that's the way, one of the things that we always did at the Shepherd's House is that it's a 24-hour-a-day job almost, and it's very hard. I think you and Hillary talked about it. It's hard to separate sometimes your job from your recovery,
right?
And it gets kind of blended, and it gets kind of funky.
How do you
sometimes.
Protect that? How do you protect your recovery from it?
So what I did is I decided, especially when I moved back down here, is that, well, even in Lexington, I would go to meetings, and I'd been in a routine of going to certain meetings, and of course, like, all my Shepherd's House guys would go there. So I just switched it up. I would go because, they don't want the guy that's kind of in charge of their program going to a meeting today at lunchtime and saying, man, I really feel like drinking. I wasn't comfortable with that. I didn't want them to lose faith in me. So I just kind of switched it up. I would start going to different meetings, and then making myself go. That's the big thing, and staying in contact with my sponsor. That's the one thing that I do really well. I feel like is that I've had the same sponsor for 4 years, and I can probably count on my fingers the times that I've missed talking to him. Including like him going on a cruise or something like that for 7 days. But like I do that well. I talk to my sponsor every day. Sponsor guys, stuff like that, and I try to make it separate. Like, this is for Roger. I can kind of click that off in my head, like, all right, it's Roger time. I got to take care of me. And there's been times where it's gotten a little hairy.
Yeah, I would think it'd be hard.
Yeah. Like I said, and then you just get sick of kind of like going to a meeting and there's all your clients, and you're like, dang. All right, guys. Well, I'll try something else. So that's why I like to go to Lexington and go to other meetings and stuff. I've driven to Louisville, and went to meetings there, wherever. I always like to kind of expand because I know my clients are going to go to certain meetings, so I'll just try to hit outside of that.
That's good stuff, man. Let's see where we are on time. And of course, I'll cut this part out. But so, what are the kinds of things that you struggle with today?
I guess probably for sure pride and ego. What happens to me is I can get caught up in the world very easily. Thinking, look what Roger's done. Look at what Roger's done. I got all this back. I'm the man. I really struggle with that sometimes. the world, getting caught up in the financial insecurities. Even though there's promises to say, hey, they're going to leave us, you're always like, I used to make the joke with my clients that, my happiness depended on what my bank account looked like. And, that's been a struggle.
It's interesting. The promises say fear of economic insecurity will leave us. It doesn't say economic insecurity will leave us.
Yeah.
It just says the fear of it.
Yeah. But I also know, like, man, I have this program, So even when I get out there like that and I'm really start struggling with stuff, I know where the solution is, and I stay in contact and I stay grounded enough, with my sponsor and stuff like that well, are you doing this, and this? Are you going to meetings? Are you praying? Are you doing the work? And it pulls me back in, but stretching myself too thin. I think that happens. Family, you got like kids involved in sports and all this stuff. And I go to school at night, and I try to maintain a full-time
what are you
job.
studying?
Social work.
Okay.
I'll be in the social work program at Campbellsville in the fall. So doing all that, and then trying to keep up with a relationship with my wife, and then my personal recovery. Mm-hmm. It's like things just kind of get a little hectic sometimes.
And how do you all navigate? Because she's in recovery,
sure,
and you're in recovery.
Yeah.
So how do you keep your programs separate, or do you keep them separate?
No, we definitely keep them separate. She outworks me, and I notice it a lot of times. I'm like, dude, shut up. She blows me away because she does things that she just has a willingness about her that really blows me away. She'll go to a lot of meetings in Lexington. That's what she does. She sponsors a lot of girls and stuff like that, and we just keep it separate. She's even sponsored clients of mine, and we just have this agreement. I don't want to hear anything about that. Let's just do it this way. And it's the best. We go to meetings together sometimes, and I think that's pretty cool. But pretty much she does her thing and I do my thing. Mm-hmm. It works better I've been in so many toxic relationships in my life where I spent 24 hours a day with that woman, because I thought she was going to fix me or whatever. And it's so sick. And like, this is the healthiest relationship since me and Alyssa got back together and we both got sober. Our relationship's amazing because we do our own thing, and normal people, they probably understand that, but I never did,
Yeah.
So like, she has her own recovery program. She does her own thing. And then, when we do come together, then, it's just normal life, man. And together, we're both sober, we're both productive, and that means we can be good for our kids, which is like the most important thing, man. It's amazing.
It's amazing how many people in recovery don't make it, in relationships.
Yeah.
And for, a variety of different situations. So you might have one alcoholic and one non-alcoholic, and the alcoholic gets sober and it just doesn't work, for whatever, because everything is so different. They don't know each other. The dynamic is different. Or you have two people, they're both addicts or alcoholics. One gets sober and one doesn't, which obviously wouldn't work for a variety of reasons sometimes. And then you have people they're both addicts, alcoholics. They both come in, they both get sober, and then it just doesn't make it, for a variety of reasons. But one reason is because they just don't know who they are. Like the sober person is not anyone I've ever met before, and they find they're not compatible. And sometimes it's amicable. They could be friends, but I'm fortunate that didn't happen to me. I'm fortunate that, I was so many years into marriage when I got sober, and I've been now married longer in sobriety than I was married in addiction. So
and me and her set out a plan at the very beginning, whenever we decided, hey, let's try this thing again, that if something happens, like, we've set healthy boundaries.
That's good.
Honestly. And I know it's a struggle and it's easy to talk it, but I really feel like that together we have a plan that if something was to ever happen, to one of us, that, we just have that plan. We have those boundaries, and I think that's like the most healthy thing that you can do.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back and visit yourself when you were, say, you tell me what age would be best, 20, 18, somewhere in there, 22. Like, if you could go back and tell yourself anything that person needs to know that now in recovery, like, what would you tell your
man, I don't
crazy self?
I don't know, Joe. I don't know if there's anything I would have told me or not, because I really believe that I had to go through every bit of that. I needed every one of those drinks. I needed every one of those failures, every one of those nights in abandoned duplexes and prison and all that stuff. I needed to have all that experience to get me where I am today.
So are you grateful for all of that
Grateful for every bit of it. My grandmother, I go see my granny. I love my granny. She raised me basically, and she'll say, I wish you would have just listened to me when you were 18 and blah, 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 blah. And I say, man, Mom, I was just out there practicing. I was out there studying for the life that I have today. I'm extremely grateful for my past, and for all those failures and all the stuff that I did to people. Like, obviously I feel bad, terrible, like that stuff happened, but I'm grateful that I can use it today for something good, and that those relationships were mendable, and we're back on track, and everything's good, and that we're able to experience life together, and that people can see that change in me. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, people that knew me before and that know me now, they're like, wow, I'm not a guy. Me and my boss, or the CEO of the Shepherd's House, we were joking today because we gave 100 bicycles to kids in the community today. And he said, if me and you were in active addiction, we would have been up here getting these bicycles and selling them on social media. And I'm like, that's a perfect example of who I would have been before compared to who I am today. Like, taking as much as I possibly can, stealing from everybody, hurting whoever to help me. And then today it's just like giving it all away, to help somebody else. Because that's the only way I'm going to live, is by helping other people.
And it's more satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's like when we're taking for a reason. We're trying to fill a hole or trying to feel a certain way, and it just never hits the spot, man. And come to find out, being able to give, and that's more complicated than it sounds, because it's not just giving. It's being able to give.
And having something to give.
Because you can just give and give and give and have nothing to give.
Yeah.
And you're just, at least you're
spinning your wheels, basically.
Right.
Yeah, so having something to give that's valuable to other people and seeing them being able to use it, that's it, man. That's what it's about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good episode right there.
All right, man. That's cool.
Yeah, man. This has been a lot of fun. Any closing words? Like I was saying in the very beginning, the whole reason for doing this is that I believe strongly that good recovery is just for people who need recovery or people who want it. I guess if you drink and you just don't want to drink anymore, and maybe you're an alcoholic, maybe you're not an alcoholic, but you just want to live a better, more spiritual life. Like, I'm telling you, like, the life that we get in recovery is amazing. It's something I did not have the capacity to understand before this journey. I could only understand it once I got into it. And now that I'm in it, it hits me every now and then that everyone deserves this. Anyone that wants it deserves it. Anyone that's trying to get sober or trying to stay sober deserves the good stuff that we've experienced. And at the very least, I have a debt of gratitude to pay it back and to make it available. So I know you're living the sober life, man, and you're living a good life of recovery. Is there anything that you want to say about that to anyone trying to get sober or trying to stay sober? A word of encouragement or a shot of hope today?
I just think that to keep going, to keep pushing. Don't give up on yourself. You're important, and there is a better life for you. I believe that everybody has access to that life we were just talking about. This sober life, this life that you can sit down and you can start writing about it right now. Everything that you want. I'm going to get sober, and in the next 5 years, I want these things, and you're going to blow all that out of the water. Mm-hmm. I really believe that because it happened to me, and if it can happen to me, I think it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, man. I mean, my standard was like I didn't think of it this way, but it's like I would have been satisfied with the same crappy life I had, just sober. Yeah. Maybe a little more money. That was that's all I wanted. Like I don't need anything else. I just wanted to somehow get rid of the hangovers, get rid of having to lie all the time. Like I just want to get this alcohol thing under control, but I don't need anything else or want anything else. And man, if I would have gotten what I wanted, I would have sold myself so short. Yeah. Like this life is unbelievable. And it's hard to describe because if I were to go back in time and tell my, pre-sober self, like all the things I'm going to be doing, like I'm going to go to treatment centers and jails and these places that smell like body odor and urine, and I'm going to help people, I would have been like, no thanks. Like that doesn't sound like a picnic to me. Yeah. But my standards have changed, my perception has changed, and now that's like as good as it gets, dude. Like finding somebody that needs this thing and is hungry and being able to give them a shot of hope and a message that, that can save their life and save somebody's father and somebody's brother and somebody's son and have them be restored back to a healthy family. I mean, that's just... It's
funny.
As good as it gets.
It's funny that you say that. I had a house manager at the Shepherd's House whenever I was a client, and we would hang out on the front porch there, and he would say, "If this is as good as life gets, are you satisfied with it?" And I would always say no. I was sober, of course, and I'm working, but I always wanted more. And looking now, I'm like, if this is as good as it gets. Okay, because this is pretty daggone good.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good, man. I love it. And the only way that I get it and I keep it is because of this program.
Amen.
Yeah.
Brother, that's a good place to stop right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And I will see you in a little bit. I'm going to go
hold on.
Okay.
My name is Joe Pusateri, and I'm living the sober life.
My name is Roger Fox, and I'm living the sober life.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Love y'all.
That's killing it, man.